Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you and welcome to the latest in our series of Doha Debates, coming to you from the Gulf state of Qatar and sponsored by the Qatar Foundation. We've seen decades of American engagement in the Middle East, and when Barack Obama took over the White House, a surge of hope that this youthful, dynamic new leader might succeed where his predecessors had failed. Last June, with the world still enthralled by him, he told an audience in Cairo that Israel's settlements had to stop and that the situation for Palestinians was intolerable. Since then, Israel has rejected his call, the building work in the settlements goes on, and it's the talking that has come to a halt. So did Mr. Obama dangerously overestimate his powers of persuasion? Or has he had too many other crises, both foreign and domestic, that have blunted his focus on the Middle East? Our motion tonight examines the state of his authority. This House believes that Barack Obama is too weak to make peace in the Middle East. Your decision as ever, but before you make it, we have an influential panel who will speak on the issue from very different standpoints. Speaking for the motion, Ahmed Mousalli. He's professor at the Department of Political Studies and Public Administration at the American University of Beirut. He specializes in contemporary Islamic movements, political Islam, and East-West relations. Also for the motion, Philip Weiss, an investigative reporter who's worked for many years in mainstream US journalism. He's also founder of the website Mondo Weiss that focuses on Israel-Palestine and on Jewish identity issues. Against the motion, Roger Cohen, best known as a columnist for the New York Times and an author. He joined the paper 20 years ago and since then has been both a correspondent and foreign editor. And with him, Sami Abu Rosa, a former political advisor in the office of the Palestinian president. He was involved in presenting the Palestinian case against the West Bank barrier to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. So now let me first call on Ahmed Mousalli to speak for the motion.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I just want to remind you of one thing. After the Madrid conference and the beginning of negotiation between the Palestinians and the Israelis, the negotiator then, Haidar Abd al-Shafi, told Secretary of State James Baker that after negotiation there was nothing left for us except the collection of garbage. And Baker said to him, "This is very good. At least you got something. I think you should build on that." And I think what we are going to see now is another phase of garbage collection and allowing the Palestinians to process this, but the Israelis will sell it for them. President Obama, I think he's well-intentioned, but the structural problems with the US, I think will prevent him, and I would leave this to my colleague Philip to talk about, will prevent him from moving forward. I think the victory that he would have achieved internally, he has already achieved by his health care insurance and security of the American people. Regionally, I think he cannot impose a plan, and by the way, he's not imposing a full-fledged plan. We are talking about a proximity talks, meaning Palestinians and Israelis were married. Now they are going back to their engagement. And these proximity talks is not meaning they are close, it means they are indirect talks through George Mitchell. The regional situation, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, occupied territories, is not only Palestine. There are occupied territories otherwhere. Regional context, the rise of Iran, the problems I mentioned, all will preclude him from imposing only a Palestinian-Israeli issue.
Would you come to an end, please?
The Palestinians themselves are fractured, and the Israelis are fractured, and there is no unity of purpose among all of this. I think Obama will not be able to pressure anyone.
Ahmed Mousalli, thank you very much indeed. You give him a year and you write him off as weak, a man facing the most intractable problem in the Middle East. You're not giving him much time, are you?
Well, I think he is going to be one-term president. The three presidents that did something on the Middle East never selected again. if you remember.
Well, he's done something. He's changed the mood music with Israel straight away, didn't he? His first visit wasn't to Israel, it was to an Islamic country, wasn't it?
Carter did more than this, and he was not re-elected.
Huge realignment. Huge realignment.
But still, he lost. Bush, the father, tried to do something, and he lost.
But would a weak man have realigned US policy straight away in his first year and annoyed so many Israelis and so many Republicans, brought a storm of protest down on his head for what he's done?
I think it would have been wiser to wait for his second term and the beginning of his second term.
Well, you're calling him weak and then you're telling him to wait. Which?
No. He is weak in the way he is seeking the implementation. You know what is...
But a weak man wouldn't have gone up and said the United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlements.
So
he said that in June. Well, previous presidents hadn't even said that.
No,
they hadn't even raised the issue of settlements with the Israelis directly.
Official U.S. policy has been that these settlements are illegal. So he's not saying anything new.
And Israel's own ambassador in the U.S. has said that relations are their worst for 35 years.
So what? They worst in
so he's changed the whole dynamic of it. Only a strong president could do that.
But look on the other hand. The Israelis got batteries to defend themselves. They are getting weapons the same way.
But you're not suggesting Obama pick up weapons, are you?
No,
he's using what he's got at his disposal.
He doesn't have much at his disposal to pressure the
But he's
Israelis.
already done something in a year. Ahmed Moussali.
Okay.
Ahmed Moussali, thank you very much indeed. Could I now ask, please, Roger Cohen to speak against the motion?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The idea that Barack Obama is too weak to achieve Middle East peace does not stand up. Too weak. This man has spent his life overcoming impossible obstacles, breaking barriers. Remember, he was too black to become president, had too many Muslim family members to win a post-9/11 White House, was too much of an outsider to beat the Clinton machine and then the McCain machine, was too cerebral, too hesitant to pass health care. And then what happened? He did all those things. Obama's toughness has trumped the naysayers again and again. Why should it not be the same in the Middle East? This president, ladies and gentlemen, is a tough realist. A lot of idealism has been projected onto Obama, but it's the US interest, US objectives that drive him. And he's now identified as a vital US national security interest, to achieve peace between Israel and Palestine. This is a huge strategic shift. It's a shift from being Israel's lawyer, which is more or less where the United States was in the Bush administration, to becoming an honest broker. And as you know, negotiations can only succeed when you have an honest broker. Now, Israel has felt, as Tim suggested, the steel of Obama's cool. It's uncomfortable with that from its indispensable ally. So what, our opponents like Ahmed will say? Obama cannot make Israel abandon its 43-year occupation, not with Netanyahu's right-wing government, not with the settlements, not with Hamas, not with the realities of US domestic politics.
Could you come to a close?
This is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. The facts are changing on the ground. US change you can believe in has encountered Salam Fayyad's change you can believe in. Palestinian statehood is being built from the ground up, with security, with nonviolence, with economic growth. This empowers Obama, it limits Israel's room for maneuver, and it proclaims a new Palestinian seriousness. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you should vote against the motion tonight. President Obama is strong, and he is a change agent.
Roger Cohen, thank you very much indeed. You say he's strong. He's suffered the steepest decline in approval ratings of any first-year president since records began. There are people in his Democratic Party who say that the party hasn't been in such a bad state for 50 years. He's lost 3 major elections.
He's got the health care bill through, Tim, which US presidents have been trying to do with decades. As you were just saying, He has brought
and gave his last ounce to give it.
Gave his last ounce, but that's Obama. He sets a long-term target.
He's not strengthened by it, he's weakened by it, isn't he?
No, he's empowered by the passing of healthcare. He would have been a
much...
much...
Doesn't look like it here in the Middle East, does it?
Well, I think he is. I think if our healthcare had not passed, he would have been a much weakened president, and it would have been much more difficult to argue, as I'm arguing tonight, that he is the man who can deliver.
But Roger Cohen, in a year of President Obama, the Middle East peace process has ground to a halt. There are now no negotiations at all. Even under Bush there were negotiations.
Well, I have some news for you, Tim. The negotiations, the proximity talks, are going to begin again next month. Yes, it's been
We've
tough.
had full storms before. We've had it touted many, many times.
There have been wobbles before. It's going to be tough. Look, this is the mother of all conflicts. It is going to be very tough.
But you said he'd succeed in the States, so why wouldn't he succeed here?
Well, I think...
There are a few more problems here than there are in the United States.
As I said, I think there are changing realities in Palestine. I think the broad terms of a settlement are known, and I think Obama is not swayed by 24-hour news cycles. He sets a target. He is deeply serious about this for the U.S. national interest, and I believe also because of his own life, his own upbringing, he has strong personal feelings about this.
He was deeply serious about the climate conference. He didn't do very well in Copenhagen, did he? I mean, there were meetings there that he had to gate crash because he wasn't even invited.
My own view is that Middle East peace is more important than climate change, but that's a personal
Yeah, but as a sign of his authority and the way he's seen on the international stage, he doesn't have the authority, does he?
I think President Obama remains extremely popular, remains a figure for change, remains somebody that people identify. He has rebranded the United States, and that has not worn off. You're arguing essentially that that's worn off in the first 15 months. I don't think it has.
Roger Cohen, thank you very much indeed. Now could I ask, please, Philip Weiss to speak for the motion.
Thank you. I believe in Barack Obama as much as Roger does. I have the same idealism about my president that Roger does. And in June, I was in Cairo and sat in that hall as an audience very much like this, including many young Arabs, heard him speak about the intolerable Palestinian conditions, the humiliation of Palestinians for 6 decades in which they have been promised statehood and have nothing to show for it. And I saw the excitement in Cairo, and I believed in it too. I thought that my president might show even-handedness in the Middle East after decades of being Israel's lawyer, as Roger says. And I wish I were on that side of the panel. I really do. And a year ago, I would have been on that side of the panel. What has happened in a year? Nothing has happened. And what we see is when Obama tries to stop even the colonization, the continued colonization of that small scrap of historical Palestine that exists for a future Palestinian state, when he tries to stop it in Jerusalem too, which is an international city, should be an international city, he is mocked by Netanyahu. And here is the point that is most important. It's not Netanyahu's resistance, it's the lack of political space in my country, the United States, for Obama to take these stands. Roger has just talked about what a great job Obama did with health care. I will tell you something. In healthcare, there is a great American political space that exists. Everything we say about our democracy happened in healthcare. You had both sides. You had people argue, you had newspapers investigating. You had people having full-page ads. You had congressmen speaking out for all different points of view. That political space does not exist in my country when it comes to the Israel-Palestine situation. The political space is imbalanced. Ahmed and I are not allowed to speak in that space, and the Israel lobby rears up, and Obama's own base, his own Democratic base, which should be giving him support on this issue, abandons him and signs letters taking Netanyahu's side. That is the difference. So even a man whom I adore, who is very strong and tough, will make no headway, sadly.
Philip Weiss, thank you very much indeed. It's stretching credibility a little bit to say that in the year that Obama's been president, nothing has happened in the relationship. Well, I'll tell you what's happened. The latest thing that's happened is that you have Jewish lobby groups like the Jewish Anti-Defamation League saying today, the day we're recording, that there's been a deeply distressing and significant shift in US policy towards Israel. Deeply distressing. They think something has happened, even if you don't.
It's great.
But in reality, nothing happened.
It's great.
So why are they up in arms about it then?
Afraid of having it.
Why are congressmen writing letters, groups of congressmen? Why are they complaining
This is a space
that US policy has shifted?
You know, there were 76 senators' letters against Obama saying, taking Netanyahu's side last week, and there were 76 senators signing the letter in 1976 when Gerald Ford tried to realign.
But this isn't the sign of a man who's prepared to lie down and just live with the status quo he inherited, is it?
I agree with you.
So that's not a sign of weakness, is it?
No, but we're not talking...
We are talking about whether he's weak or strong.
No, Tim, forgive me. I think the question is whether he is strong enough. And yes, he's a strong man, but no man can overcome these forces. I think it's...
You write him off in a year?
No, well...
You said nothing has happened. Now you're admitting something has happened, but not enough. So you're shifting already.
No, that's not true. I accept it. I accept that many things have changed. Some very good things have happened.
Well, that goes against what you said in your opening statement.
No, because the question is whether he's strong enough to pull off Middle East peace, and the answer, alas, is no.
He's the first president since George Bush Sr. to publicly say anything at all about the issue of settlements.
Say more, please, say more.
So is that the sign of a weak man?
It's a great thing.
To revisit these issues?
Tim, let me point out something to you. You know, you read that very strong statement he made about the settlements must stop. He made them last June. And the statements since then have been far less emphatic. And already he is getting pushback from his own side, from the Democrats, from the Israel lobby.
Well, if you read the Israel lobby, yeah. They seem to think he's pushing pretty hard in a new direction.
Great. It's wonderful. That is a wonderful development. The Petraeus statement is a wonderful development, and so is the fracturing.
Okay, so something has happened.
Absolutely.
He's done something in his first year.
No question.
All right, okay. Philip Weiss, thank you very much indeed. Now could I ask, please, Sami Abu Rosa to speak against the motion.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt that there's a lot of skepticism and cynicism in the Middle East. I think that in President Obama, we are seeing a different type of presidential leadership. It's a presidential leadership that is not surrounded by advisors that are very ideologically driven, but advisors that are, like the president himself, very much attached to reality. I think what President Obama and high-level officials in the US have started is to provoke a debate, a very important debate, which is an essential element of good presidential leadership, and create a lot of stress and a lot of heat among not only the pro-Israel lobby, but within the wider public domain. What he has done really well was pointing his finger onto the settlements, knowing that the settlements are the true face, the true motivation, the true driver of Israeli policy in the occupied Palestine territory. It's the true face of a colonial occupation, and by pointing your finger at the settlements, even though he has backed down a bit, the long-term goal of a full settlement freeze is still on the table. But he has actually reframed the conflict to a true conflict about land and freedom for the Palestinian people. And it's a very common sense position. It's a very common logic position that also is shared by the Palestinian leadership. And that is the change on the ground that Roger was talking about. The change on the ground is that the Palestinian leadership finally is reconnecting again with its people.
Could you come to a close, please?
For a long time, the people have been seen as a liability rather than as a resource. And I think the refusal to resume talks without a settlement freeze, I think the fact that the official Palestinian leadership is endorsing nonviolent protests, and also the fact that institution building, security institutions, and economic infrastructure building, etc., is really taking away the pretext for the Israeli argument that there's no reliable partner, or the somewhat patronizing view that there's no ready partner for peace.
Okay.
I truly believe...
ask you to stop. Thank you, Sami Abu Rosa. Thank you very much indeed. You slightly destroyed your own argument there. You said that President Obama pointed his finger at the settlements and then he backed down.
He backed down.
You slightly destroyed your own argument, saying that he's strong. That was an act of weakness. He got sand kicked in his face, didn't he, on the beach?
It's tough to be president. You have many issues in the air.
Yeah, it's tough. The question is, though, whether you're strong enough, or as the motion says, too weak to make peace in the Middle East.
I think the
if he backed
long-term-
down so quickly, it would suggest he's weak.
I think he backed down slightly, and I think he's going to go back to have to call for a full
Doesn't matter whether
settlement
it's
freeze.
slightly or a lot, does it? A back down is badly viewed in this region, isn't it?
Well,
Any sign of weakness is instantly spotted in this region, isn't it?
It is, but I'm quite sure it's going to be back on the table as well. And I think that also on the ground, the Palestinian leadership is supporting that position by refusing to enter talks if there's no full settlement freeze in East Jerusalem as well as in the West Bank.
Do you think people in this region would now be warning about the danger of war if Obama had a firm hand on the tiller? It's exactly because he hasn't got a firm hand that people don't accept his authority, that, as you say, he backed down a little bit, that people are saying, we're moving towards war in this region. Isn't that a sign of American weakness, a visible sign of American weakness?
Well, but it's exactly because of that, because he knows, because he's a tough realist, that there is a danger of war. I think it's because
Yeah, but it's
of
happening
that.
because of the vacuum that he's allowed to develop since he came to power, isn't
I'm
it?
quite confident that he's going to close this vacuum again.
Based on what? Your confidence is based on what?
I'm confident on the way he has come to power, confident in how the people he's surrounded by, and also confident in what I see on the Palestinian street.
And what do you see on the Palestinian street?
I see on the Palestinian street there's an alignment with the position of President Obama and what is happening on the Palestinian street. That actually
Depends which street. The street of the West Bank, not the street of Gaza.
Well, even in the street of Gaza, there was a joint demonstration between Hamas and Fatah about a week ago. So I think among the people there's more unity, as it seems, as opposed to the leadership.
All right, Sami Abu Rosa, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to throw it now open to the questions, just to remind you that the motion that we're discussing, this House believes that Barack Obama is too weak to make peace in the Middle East. Right, it's up to you. Your questions. Gentleman in the second row.
Hello, good evening. My name is Anas from Qatar. And my question is, how would Mr. President Obama will reach to an agreement between the Palestinian people and the Israelis, whilst he has said in the United States forward the Israeli lobby that Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel and will not separate it.
So your question is he an honest broker?
Yeah,
Roger Cohen.
That was said during the campaign. It was not said during his presidency.
Strong man.
So it doesn't count because it was said
Well,
during the campaign.
subsequently he retracted it.
So where was
He
that
retracted
strength?
that statement. It's clear that under any negotiation, we are talking about the 1967 lines with agreed territorial swaps, some kind of agreement on refugees, and East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. That is what is on the table currently. And of course, there are strong objections to that from the Israeli side, but that is on the table.
Philip Weiss, you wanted to come in here.
I want to address the fiction that this side is raising about peace. And I think there is a possibility that my president can get a handshake on the White House lawn. That possibility exists.
Yes.
But the issue is, this gentleman raises the issue of Jerusalem.
A handshake on what?
On some type of deal. But let me get to my point, which is about Jerusalem, which this gentleman raised, and which Rogers suggested that, things are going swimmingly with the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank. Well, if you've been to Jerusalem, you know that Israel has colonized Palestinian villages all around Jerusalem, on the east, on the south, on the north, and the access of Palestinians to the Holy Basin, to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is highly restricted. And you have to go, if you live on the West Bank, you go through a checkpoint that is like being a cow going through a cattle guard. I've been through it. And these conditions right now are tolerated by Barack Obama. The settlements that these gentlemen are talking about, that he's either going to freeze or he's not going to freeze, he's going to do, that's only more. These neighborhoods exist, that colonization of East Jerusalem exists, and so the idea that there is some type of fairness around this city, which has been at the crux of this dispute for over 100 years.
Let me bring Sami Abu Rosa in. You wanted to come back on this.
And there's no doubt that, living there myself, going through the checkpoints, seeing the settlements, seeing the wall expanding, etc., that all of that is happening right now. But I think by actually pinpointing the settlements, he's really trying to expose the very motivation of the occupation. Yes, he was called for a settlement freeze. Yes, he backed down a bit.
What's the point of exposing the motivation?
I think
instead of doing something about it.
I think it's just to prepare for later, because the settlement freeze will inevitably lead to the settlement dismantlement. And by calling for a settlement freeze, is really you're saying that decolonization has to happen. You know, checkpoints, the wall, the settlements have to leave in order for a Palestinian state to exist in the first place.
That's not what he's saying.
He hasn't said it yet. Yes. But I think he is pointing in that right direction.
Roger Cohen, you wanted to come in?
Well, Phil, I think you have to get real. I mean, to say that Obama accepts this situation, accepts this colonization, because he hasn't snapped his fingers and changed the situation overnight, that's preposterous. So this is a process. This is a 43-year-old occupation. And I myself was going through those checkpoints last week, and they're absolutely humiliating, and this situation has to change. But it's not going to be changed through war. It's not going to be changed through fighting or through intifadas. We've learned that. Both sides, I hope, have learned that. And the president is determined to move forward. He's going to move forward step by step. That is the only option open to him.
Philip Weiss, you want to answer that?
Well, one point I would make, just one point of rebuttal I would make, is that this is a frank and open discussion of what it is the Palestinian experience is around East Jerusalem.
It's
intolerable. And I don't think it's news. I don't think it's news for many people here. That discussion does not happen in the United States. And Roger, it doesn't happen in the New York Times. You do not see this exposed to Americans. When you talk about the occupation, it's an Israeli occupation, and we don't talk about it in the United States.
But Phil, you yourself have praised me for writing about these issues in your blog, and I think one or two people in the New York Times read me, and maybe one or two people in the International Herald Tribune. I mean, I think that to say there is no debate, I think there is a dawning debate. There is a nascent debate. We've seen J Street emerge among Jews in the United States who believe that an uncritical embrace of Israel is bad for the United States and bad for Israel. We're beginning to see movement. Again, the change is not going to come overnight, but I think there's more debate now than a year ago.
All right, I'm going to take a question. Gentleman in the third row in the striped shirt. You, sir. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Abdul Halim Abu Jalala. I am a Palestinian living here in Doha. Is it perhaps pessimistic to look that any American administration, any American president is perhaps too weak to inflict change in the area and to achieve peace?
Philip Weiss. Could any American president do it?
I think it's a very good question, and I suspect the answer is no. In Camp David process, the lack of Arab expertise, the lack of Arab Americans in the negotiating team was so profound that they had translators serving as negotiators at some point. And that shows, that shows, I believe, the dominance of the Israel lobby in American life.
Right, okay. Yeah. We're going to take a question from the gentleman in the third row then. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Adil. I am from Eritrea, Qatar University. My question is to the opposition. I wonder, what we know is that America had an imperial interest in the region. And in my opinion, one of the problems that there is no peace in the East, in the Middle East, is because America has an interest in that, in keeping that problem. So is Barack Obama strong enough to change that imperialistic hegemonic interest of America to shift it into bringing peace in the Middle East?
Would you like to take that?
I fully agree with you that the United States has a strong imperial interest, a strong strategic interest in the region. We're not debating here that that is the case. We're actually saying that yes, there is a strategic interest in the region. And exactly because of that, he wants to reevaluate and realign the type of relationship he has with Israel because there's a strategic interest in the region. So I fully agree with you, but we're not debating here to change the American ambition to remain the hegemon in the region. It will remain the hegemon in the region, but the best way to do that is to change the type of relationship with Israel and actually cold shoulder Israel for a while.
Okay, you wanted to come back.
My question is he strong enough to change that interest? What if that interest conflicts with his agenda?
I think he's strong enough. He keeps foreign policy very close to his chest. I think he's very determined and very focused. It's very difficult, it's very tough to be the American president, but I think he's strong enough. And also going back to the...
But he's already showing he's going to put his interests above those of the Middle East. I mean, isn't that the message from David Petraeus? He'll put his interests first.
Well, that is true. But
he wants the conflict settled because it's not in America's interest.
But it is saying it is in America's interest to tackle the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
May I?
Please.
Look, the U.S. is perceived in the area, in the Muslim world in general, and the Arab world in particular, as a colonialist, imperialist power. Okay? But it's not only the Palestinian issue. They occupied and destroyed Iraq. They are in Afghanistan. They are in Pakistan. They occupy most of the areas around us. They have bases, navies, air base, and so on. So the U.S. is hated not only for the Palestinians. This is only a fraction of it, an important fraction of it.
I agree with you.
And Obama is not able and cannot. There is an establishment in America that is behind all of this. He cannot change the multi-trillion-dollar industry that is behind the war machine just because Obama loves the Palestinians or he doesn't love the Palestinians.
Roger Kerr, you want to come back on this?
Ahmed, if I may, Arab powers are very good at blaming others and pointing fingers, and especially pointing the finger at the United States.
Them.
But the most important single phenomenon in the Middle East today, in my view, is Prime Minister Salam Fayyad. He is saying, victimhood, the narrative, not interested, doesn't put food on my table. I want to grow our economy. I want to move forward. I want serious institutions. I'm not interested in blaming the United States or
Nobody
blaming Iran.
listens to him.
That's what you're doing. It's the usual finger pointing. And
what do you mean finger
that
pointing?
is a basis. That is a basis on which,
let him finish.
if I may finish, that is a basis. That new seriousness of purpose from the Palestinian Prime Minister is something on which the United States and President Obama can build.
Okay, we need to hear from the audience a little more. Lady in the second row.
Good evening. My name is Khadra from University of Calgary. My question to the proposition side, Mr. Philip, you have said that the Palestinian position is weak, especially when it came to the negotiation side with the Israeli. Don't you think that weakness it came from their side? They have to solve their internal conflict so others can solve their problem. We shouldn't blame Obama for solving the issue while they are not solving their problem. So what do you think?
Well, I think obviously the division of Palestinians is a significant factor in all this. But I would take that point and go right to Roger when he says that Salam Fayyad is the leader of a new Palestine. I don't think that it is fair to talk about building a country without rights. These people don't have any political rights. And when you talk about the Palestinians, they have very few political rights. They're under occupation in the West Bank and in Gaza. They've been bombed to smithereens in Gaza. They can't come and go as they please. You and I can come and go, and these are basic political rights, civil liberties that we take for granted around the world. Palestinians don't have, and Roger says, let them build on that.
But the question is whether the Palestinians should sort themselves out. The question before Obama can get involved. That was the question.
Of course, I think they should, but I think that the division, this is another factor that he's dealing with that's very real. And when Roger and Sami talk about the PA in the West Bank, they're overlooking the fact that a very significant part of the Palestinian population has not signed on to the PA. Yes, they should, but this is again something that I don't think Obama has the personal power to overcome. And by dealing only with one faction, he's not going to overcome it.
I think you've answered the question. Yes, please.
I think this is a fair point. For the Palestinian movement to have two leaderships is clearly a bad thing. But the answer to that, in my view, is not just to sit back and say, oh, well, can't do anything, they're divided. The answer is to build up the peace process with the Palestinian Authority, with whom one can negotiate now. And then if you're getting to the 67 borders with land swaps, with some kind of agreement on refugees, that is going to empower the Fayyads of this world and will gradually weaken Hamas. The answer is not just to wait. Let the process unfold, and then maybe there will be some changes that help resolve that division.
Okay, Ahmed Masali.
Well, Salam Fayyad is not building anything and will not be allowed to build anything. everything is under the control of Israeli occupation. Even if Abbas or Fayyad wants to leave
when were you last in the West Bank?
Let me finish. Even if they want to move around or move out, they have to get the permission of the military ruler of the West Bank. Their money is held by Israel, and they cater to them as much as
So how does that answer the question?
Development
How does that answer the question that was put?
are not allowed, and the division of the Palestinian is not what prohibiting Obama from. You have the same division in the Israeli government.
Okay,
there
all
are
right.
radicals and.
Sami Abu Rosa, briefly, you wanted to say something.
Ahmed, you talk all the time about the facts. We agree about the facts. It is a very difficult situation on the
changing
ground.
facts.
But everything that has been made, everything that has been built can be unmade and unbuilt. There's no doubt about that. But let's go back to the question regarding the division, very briefly. I think exactly, if there's trust in a US administration, that is an ingredient for reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. So you actually take away...
It's a big if, isn't it?
It's a big if, but you take away one of the stubborn conditions not to have reconciliation. And so there's this understanding there has to be a sequence between reconciliation first, then talking to the Israelis, then possibly having a process. It doesn't have to be like that. Okay. Politics is very messy.
All right. I'm going to take a question from the lady at the back.
My name is Dina, and I'm from Palestine. And my question is that how long are the Palestinians going to have to wait till Obama takes actions against the illegal settlements in Jerusalem? Because Israel has proved that once it's built its settlements, it forms concrete. It stays there like concrete. So how long are the Palestinians going to have to wait? If the Israelis build their settlements, then there's no turning back, and there goes 12% of Jerusalem.
Okay, so, do you believe there is a next stage in the
I do believe there's a next stage, and I think it's far from satisfactory, but I think that the Palestinians have to wait just a couple of weeks, in the sense that when these proximity talks begin, there is going to be no more building. That is going to be firmly laid down by the White House. If Israel engages in another provocation of the kind we saw when Joe Biden was in Jerusalem, there are going to be consequences. And
what do you see those consequences being?
Well, we might see a United Nations resolution condemning the Israeli action that the United States does not oppose, for example. Traditionally, the United States has vetoed that kind of thing. There will be more and more pressure. So
what about the money? What about the aid? What about the aid? Because that's the big pressure point, isn't it?
Yeah, that you're not going to see, I don't believe. Certainly not in a first term, anyway. But
why not?
I think it's too sensitive.
But if he's serious...
Well, he's serious, but he's not. He's serious, but he's also a politician who has to make careful calculations about.
And he's worried about the Jewish lobby even further.
He's firm. He's firm. He's moving forward.
I mean, in 3 months' time, half of the Congress and so on should be elected, and there is a lot of pressure on him by the Democrats not to pressure Israel.
I think it's very important to understand what happened in the last few weeks and in the last few months. Israel has been behaving as a spoiled child all the time in the relationship with the United States. Now there's a president coming and saying that if you go to the candy store again, stealing more Palestinian land, there will be a price to the goods you take. This is significant. No other president has done that before. Having a child myself, I think what Barack Obama is doing is actually telling the child that no, you cannot do that, and that is actually a more honest special relationship rather than just a different relationship.
Could I just add one thing?
Yeah, briefly.
We're talking about this as if President Obama is carrying the whole weight of the world on his shoulders, and he has to be so strong on his own to bring this conflict to an end. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not the case. The world is tired of this conflict. The European Union is tired of this conflict. Asians are tired of this conflict. There has been war after war.
Palestinians are pretty tired of it.
Indeed.
We are tired.
This has created an environment. The recent statements from the so-called quartet have been much stronger. And I think that Obama is operating within that context, which is one reason why, far from being too weak to bring peace, he is strong enough.
I'm going to take a question from the lady in the front row, please.
I'm so glad you brought up this analogy of the child, and I really think my question for
Where are you from,
the motion.
please?
I'm Arab American, but I want to ask the question whether Israel is conceptualized as a little child or it's actually a teenager who's growing up and becoming more independent, and it doesn't say anything about the weakness or the strength of a parent to tell a teenager or an adult what to do or what not to do. Yeah. If you're comparing Israelis and Palestinians, Israel wants to see itself as a teenager or an adult and wants to see the other part as that child.
Okay, Philip Weiss, you want to come in here?
Unless we change that relation, I don't think it's a matter of a US president or not.
Okay, Philip Weiss.
I guess I would just refer to the, talk about the Palestinian experience, which is that right now, Palestinians are demonstrating every week in a nonviolent manner, very much as there were demonstrations in my country against Jim Crow in the 1960s. They're demonstrating every week. And how are the Israelis responding? They're not responding like a little child. They're shooting bullets at these people, and they're shooting tear gas canisters. They're wounding these people. They're trying to suppress. They are trying to suppress a nonviolent demonstration with violence because that's the only language that Israel understands. And the fact that they have been indulged by the United States, which I agree with.
Let her come back. What were you going to say?
So what I'm saying, actually, I agree with you, but that is like Israel is acting like a state that has the monopoly over that kind of violence. So it's a complete adult and trying to say, I'm independent here, and you, President Obama or whoever, is not telling me what to do.
Well, I think the United States has to take that adult across its lap and give it a spanking. And he's not doing it.
Roger Cohen, would you agree with that?
I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing that right now. Before our eyes. It might not be as severe a spanking as most people in the audience would like to see.
But a spanking, but it's not having his pocket money taken away, is it?
But believe me, when, as you know, Tim, when Prime Minister Netanyahu was in Washington recently, he was not a happy camper. He was getting the cold shoulder, and that was evident all around the world. And that is something new.
I mean, if I may, I mean, the metaphor of a child is misleading because Israel, I mean, is not a child. Israel, first of all, is going after the Palestinians and killing them and deporting them and taking their land and so forth. So it's not a matter of innocence. I mean, this is the power of arrogance and the power of occupation. And I cannot compare it to a child and his innocence.
Okay, all right, you don't accept the analogy.
If nothing material happens in terms of pressure on Israel, then imposing sanctions on Israel, not aiding Israel. I mean, Israel.
Okay, let me ask you this: if you think Obama is weak, if you think Obama is weak, what would strong look like? What would it look like to you?
You would
if he
tell
was strong?
Israel, if you don't stop, I'll stop the financial aid that I give you above the table and under the table.
That's the only thing you would accept as strong.
Beginning with.
Okay, beginning with. All right. Okay, I'm going to take a question. I'm going to take a question from the gentleman in the second row, please.
Is it really Obama's weakness, or is it maybe the Palestinian side weakness, the corrupt government, and basically their inability to really do anything?
Okay, Ahmed Moussali.
Yeah, I mean, there is a blame on the Palestinian government and those who are ruling on different sides. But the core issue is not controlled by the Palestinians themselves. I mean, they are occupied, they are repressed, they are oppressed. There is internal fighting, that's true. But in the, after all, the Arab states are not fighting for them. Israel is given all of the power to manipulate them, and the U.S. supports them to repress them. And in that context, what could the Palestinians do, even if they are united? They cannot do much. They were once united under Arafat, and what happened?
Ahmad, you're going back to the finger pointing. You're going back to exactly what I was saying earlier.
Everything I say,
you're saying we can't do anything. The forces in the world are too great for us to have responsible leadership, transparent governance, institutions, and economy.
What institutions?
You have not been in the West Bank recently.
You have an American general who's telling
if you had, you would see
okay,
that
please, don't speak at once.
Sorry,
please,
you have not been in the West Bank recently, because if you had, you could not possibly be arguing what you're arguing tonight. Look, we are not discussing tonight.
You'll have a chance.
Can I just, there's a slight confusion here, I think. Everybody around this table, on both sides, completely agrees, I think, about the intolerable injustices being suffered by the Palestinian people. We're not debating that tonight. We're debating whether President Obama is strong enough to do something about it. That is the issue, and that is what you have to decide in your minds tonight.
Okay, Sami Abu Rosa, quick word.
I think, yes, many mistakes have been made, many big mistakes have been made by the Palestinian leadership in the past. But that's not really on the table here. That's not the question on the table here. I would agree, I think, with most of you that third-party pressure is needed. And I think we can see this third-party pressure, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever side you want to take, in the US president. And I believe that he can deliver on this pressure to actually be a more honest
Okay, all right, Philip Weiss. Closing word.
I want to raise one point. Roger was asked by Tim, what about aid? What about the aid that we give, the $3 billion that my country gives to Israel every year? Here is the president. You've seen the picture of the eagle with the arrows in one hand and the, what's in the other hand?
The sun, probably.
Okay. The strong American president, what does he wield? He wields the power of money and aid. Roger was asked, what about the aid? That's too sensitive. He's a politician. That is the problem. There is a structural problem with the American president cannot even use one of his weapons in manipulating a foreign country.
Very brief word, and then we're going to go to the vote. Very brief word.
I didn't say exactly that, Phil. I said I didn't think we'd see it used, at least not in a first term. It's clearly a weapon that is there and usable.
But you said it's sensitive.
All right. Okay, we are going, ladies and gentlemen, to vote on the motion that this House believes Barack Obama is too weak to make peace in the Middle East. Would you please take your voting machines? Let me just explain how they work. If you want to vote for the motion, that is the side represented by Ahmed Musali and Philip Weiss, you press button 1. The yes button. If you want to vote against the motion, that is the side represented by Roger Cohen and Sami Abu Rosa, you press button 2, the no button, whichever button you want to press, please do it now. Right, there is the vote. 58% for the motion. 58% for the motion. 42% against. The motion has been narrowly carried. All it remains for me to do is to thank our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much for coming here today, and thank you to you, the audience, for your questions. The Doha Debates will be back again in a month's time. Till then, from all of us on the team, have a safe journey home. Good night. Thank you for coming. Good night.